The Lakers have been in contact with the LA mayor's office to discuss the possibility of opening their practice facility for players before the current shelter-at-home order for Los Angeles residents expires on May 15th, sources told our Dave McMenamin. Now, after the Hawks were unwilling to immediately reopen their practice facility for players to return for limited workouts, the NBA announced it's pushing back its facility reopening date to May 8th. The league had been planning to reopen facilities beginning with the Hawks because Georgia had been among the first states to loosen their stay-at-home orders amid the coronavirus pandemic. Stephen A., this is sounding pretty good. How close do you think we are to seeing NBA action?
I believe the NBA playoffs will begin in the first or second week of July at the latest, possibly earlier, possibly the very first week of July. I think that's what this is all about. I think that they're hell-bent on making sure that they finish this season. It doesn't have to be an end to the regular season. People that I've spoken to in the league, Max, players, coaches, GMs, owners, agents, they say that everything's been discussed in terms of descending upon Las Vegas, renting out several hotels. There's 4 different arenas you could use, et cetera, et cetera. They've talked about all of these things. They've talked about a playing tournament for the last couple of seeds in East Conference. They've talked about all of those things. But in the end, what you've consistently heard is that unless something disastrous happens that makes you fall back and regress, to the point where, we sort of revisit the state of affairs that existed 5 to 6 weeks ago. The NBA is intending on moving forward, and they're doing everything that they can to ensure that there will be an NBA playoffs that goes from July probably into and through the month of August, whereas it'll possibly be, I've heard things from 5-game series in the first 2 rounds to a 7-game series in the conference finals and the NBA finals. All of these things have been discussed. I think when you hear talk about the reopening of the facilities because of the relaxation of the stay-at-home rules in certain states like Georgia, Florida, and others, even though it was originally scheduled for May 1st, then we learned it was going to be May 8th. In the city of New York, the state of New York, you got Governor Cuomo talking about phases in terms of reopening the economy. That would begin, phase 1 would begin around May 15th, and then you go on from there. When you hear these kind of things taking place, it's a good sign. It's not reason for euphoric optimism or anything like that, but it's definitely a good sign from the standpoint if you're the NBA and you certainly have no intentions of playing in front of fans to begin with. It's just a matter of the participants and team personnel being in attendance. They believe it's very, very doable. They're going to have NBA playoffs, and it's going to begin in July. That's what I think this is all about right now.
Yeah, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, and I hope I'm wrong, and I don't know anything for sure, but this is just my reading of the situation. I think we all want to hope for the best, and you need to prepare for the worst, but the Bob Costas comment from last week, I think, is probably the most realistic, that we're not going to see major American team sports this year. I think the NBA is right to aggressively try to position themselves so that if there's an opportunity, they quickly get back to business, get as many games as they can in, because there could be disruptions, even if they're able to start with, to shut it down, and then they bring it back up again and try to get this thing done. I think that's a good idea. I'm just not really optimistic that that's going to happen. The latest over the weekend, by the way, about the coronavirus, this was Saturday, I believe it was, reported in the Washington Post, but since then, Forbes and the New York Times and local Fox affiliates, and it's been picked up more widely. Coronavirus, originally thought to attack the lungs, Stephen A., attacks the kidney, the heart, the brain. People are dying of strokes in their 30s and 40s, where originally people thought, well, that group is safe, they have mild symptoms. So asymptomatic and mildly symptomatic people in their 30s and 40s are dying of strokes, and the kind of strokes that you would normally see. I think the average age was 74, you're supposed to see it, but they're in their 30s and 40s. We just don't have a lot of information about the virus, and at first it sounded like, well, it's like a really strong flu. Well, that doesn't sound so bad, but the more we learn, the more we know there's a lot we don't know, and because testing is still limited, and there's no vaccine available. Those are really the conditions, Stephen A., that I look for. Is testing widely available in the absence of a vaccine? It's still not there yet. And until it is, and there are strict kind of quarantining measures taken, I just don't see a sustainable a path to a sustainable sports league coming back, or coming back in a sustainable way.
Let me address you directly, and obviously I want you to respond because I'm addressing what you're saying. Neither one of us are saying what should happen. We're not medical professionals, and we're not literally talking about, oh, we know. We don't know, okay? Both you and I have conceded that. So let's make sure we make it clear to our audience. Neither of us are talking about, excuse me, this is what should happen. We're talking about what we think is going to happen. And where I disagree with you and what you're saying is that it's very, very uncomfortable to embrace what I'm about to say. But what I'm about to say is what I believe officials who make all of these decisions are ultimately going to make. I think that they're going to deduce what qualifies as acceptable risk. They're going to take not only their economies into consideration, but the economy as a whole, not just the nation's economy, but the global economy. And that is why you're going to see people with the mentality moving forward of taking chances, because they're going to say, what are we supposed to do? Stand still indefinitely? They're not going to do that. That's not a realistic approach, in my opinion. So because of that, I think, Max, what they're going to do is there are folks like you and others who obviously have strong feelings based on the facts that you have absorbed. These are certain things that should not be happening. There are obviously a lot of people in positions of power who differ. They're going to communicate with people in power who differ. You're going to take into account the economy, whether it's the league's economy, the nation's economy, the global economy. Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.